It is Dr. Brooklyn here from the Wellness Way Burr Ridge. And today it is so exciting that it's our first time hosting here at Barbara's Bookstore in Burr Ridge. And I have a special guest with me today, Dr. Melissa Salinas.
Hi, everyone.
And so I'm gonna have you introduce yourself.
Absolutely. So I'm Dr. Salinas. I'm a clinical psychologist who specializes in trauma. But my company, Authentic Revival Movement, links Kundalini Yoga, which is focused on meditation and calming the body, with psychology. So the idea behind the company itself is to retrain the body's stress response with psychology and Kundalini Yoga.
And what I find so exciting about this is that when I first met Dr. Melissa, it was through clinical psychology and understanding the role that it plays in what I do. So you're like, well, what do you do? So I am a chiropractic physician, and I don't like to say I practice functional medicine because I practice it a little bit differently than most functional medicine docs do.
Mm-hmm.
I like to make connections. So all my connections that I make, I feel are meaningful. And what I mean by that is finding Dr. Melissa, I understood that there's a component of what I do that is out of my scope of practice. And it comes very often when it's like dealing with stress, anxiety,
Absolutely.
depression.
Mm-hmm.
But I realize there's a connection.
Yeah.
So it can be in the digestive system. It can be the adrenals. And I can handle that aspect of it. But when it comes to tools,
right,
and finding ways to cope with that, then I'm like, hey, I pass that on to you all.
100%.
And so it's like, it works out for us.
Yeah.
And so that's what brought us here today, because we really want to talk about coping with stress. So we all know we're in this new normal. And do I think that things will ever get back to being normal?
Not sure about that.
Yeah, we don't know, right? But in this new normal, I've had many patients come into the office, and they're like, I'm stressed out. There's so many changes.
Right.
Everybody's reevaluating their lives, right?
Absolutely.
I make the joke. I'm like, we found out if we really like our husbands or our kids. We may not like them at times, but we definitely love them. But really, it's come to that point where we're like, what do we need to do? How do we go about this? Or just working from home.
Right.
And then we had the component of protest.
100%.
So we wanted it to be peaceful protesting, and some of them were, some of them weren't. Okay. We had the kids that were out of school. I mean, it's just a whole bunch of things that happened all at one time, and just trying to cope and deal with that has been a strain on everybody.
100%, including ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, we're trying to figure it out. But like you said, that mind-body connection, which, let's be honest, society separates them, right? There's psychology and there's a doctor. Mm-hmm. But the truth is that mind-body go together, and It's time to bring them back.
Absolutely. So I want to tell you guys a story that happened. And so this is how, so what are we talking about today? Stress, anxiety, and depression. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to talk about more so on the adrenal aspect of it. And then I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Melissa, and she's going to elaborate on that as well. But the story that I want to tell you all is what happened in 2014. Mm. So in 2014, my dad was beaten by the Chicago police.
Wow.
And they gave us a runaround. Mm-hmm. We really didn't know where he was. My mom was coming from out of town, and she's like, have you talked to your dad? I was like, 4 o'clock when I picked up my 3-year-old. Well, my son's 8 now, but it's like when I picked up my little guy. And she goes, well, I haven't heard from him. So about 8 o'clock in the evening, we get a call that he's been arrested. And I go, for what?
Wow.
So as a child, what do? You call the police station, and I say, hey, you have this individual here. I heard he's been arrested.
Right.
Can you tell me anything about that? We're processing him. So I hang up. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. I've never had anybody arrested in my life, right? So in the interim, my sister calls, and I tell her the situation. She lives in California. So she's like, I'm going to call. So she calls, and they go, oh, he's at the hospital. So automatically in my mind, here's the stress response that starts happening.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, like, is he hurt? What happened? All these things are like going through my mind. Mm-hmm. So I get in the car with my mom. I go to her house, pick her up, get in the car. We start driving to the hospital. Mm-hmm. So me being a physician, what do? I call the hospital that they said he's at. Mm-hmm. They said, we haven't had anybody check in 24 hours with that name. Just said, maybe they got it wrong, right?
Right.
I'm going to call the hospital that's next door. Mm-hmm. We haven't had anybody to check in.
Wow.
Right. And so living in the suburbs, now we're heading into the city. So I drive to the police station where they say he is. He's not there. And then they tell me that they've taken him to a hospital that's all the way, literally like east of Chicago. That just, it shouldn't even be open anymore, right?
Right.
So when I get there, he's unconscious, beaten to a pulp. And so I walked in first because, again, not understanding what we were going to walk into, I didn't want my mom to have to do that.
Absolutely.
And sure enough, you know, that's what we saw.
I'm so
And
sorry.
thank you. And it was a process that lasted months. He had to learn how to walk again. He just very traumatic. So why do I talk about this? Because we realize with all the peaceful protesting, it doesn't matter where you stand on this, right?
100%.
But every time this happens, do you think he has a stress response?
Absolutely.
Do you think I have a stress
response? Let's talk about you.
Do you think I have a stress response, right? Yeah, so these are things that I think we really need to start talking about, because did we go to counseling after that? We didn't. We tried to deal with that on our own, and what impact does it have? Because again, every time we see this on the news, it brings back memories. And again, I want to say I was naive, right? I'm like, we live in the burbs, we're working people, we're college educated, this doesn't happen.
Right.
It happens. It happens. You know, so not only that, you know, so looking at that in the peaceful protesting, that brings about stress. I just had explained earlier, my son was a senior this year. No problem.
Yeah.
Graduation was a drive-through. Okay. And now going into freshman year of college, guess what? He's staying home for the first semester.
Oh, that's fun.
Fun for me.
Some extra stress.
Yeah, you know, so talk about stress. So we have these situations that are currently happening, and then we're moms. Some of us are moms. We're working from home. I told you earlier, my daughter's trying to get into my Zoom call, trying to raise her hand.
Hi,
she
Mom.
wants to be seen, right? You know?
Yeah.
So just dealing with all of this all at one time has brought on a lot of stress.
Absolutely. Well, you know, it's funny you bring that up, because my niece and my nephew, both, I mean, obviously they're Mexican. They're 100% Mexican. My brothers went through it. It's true. My brothers went through it. They had master's degrees. They were stopped by the cops. Well, now my niece and my nephews are starting to say, well, what if I get stopped by the cops? Now, these are 10, 8-year-olds, and they're having a stress response to what they're saying. No matter what their positive interactions have been, doesn't matter. They're still starting to reflect on their own, and that's stressful. On top of the fact that my niece is now looking at hazmat suits because she doesn't know what's going to happen when we go back into school. So all this stress is affecting our adults and our kids.
Right.
So I think this is a good time to figure out, what are we going to do?
Right. And the topic that I've seen lately is, are we sending our kids back to school, or are we homeschooling?
Right.
We have situations where it's like, do we want our kids to wear a mask? I'm going to be frank with you. Wearing a mask for 5 hours out of the day is, it's not fun for anyone. And just breathing the same air in all day long, to me, is a problem. That's definitely an issue. And then additionally, the kids go to school for socialization. So we have these now barriers between the kids. Gym class has been canceled. Lunchroom has been canceled. All activities have been canceled, and then maybe they're in school a couple days and maybe out. So as a parent, that's a concern to me, because it's not even about the virus, which we'll get into a little bit later. Not even about the virus at this point. It's about the stressors that they're having. These kids are, you know, are they going to suffer from some sort of depression because they need that interaction? You need those facial expressions to understand, like, if your teacher's talking to you, are we happy? We sad? What? Those are learning cues.
Absolutely.
So what do we do there?
Absolutely. So this is a great topic, and I think a great time to have this conversation.
Right.
It's a very apropos time.
Absolutely. So speaking on that, I want to go into our stress response and the adrenals. And I'm sorry, guys, I'm going to be looking on my phone here to guide you guys through the slides here. So if we, again, we talked about the first slide that you'll see there, just dealing with, you know, kids going back to school, the whole situation of mask wearing, the social injustices, and then again, I know dads, you may work from home too, but moms have more stress. So, but if we look at stress and the definition of stress, which is my next slide, and I'm going to read this to you guys. It's the body's response to a physical, mental, or emotional pressure. Stress causes chemical changes in the body that can raise blood pressure, heart rate, and blood sugar levels. It may also lead to feeling of frustration, anxiety, anger, or depression. Wow, that's a lot.
It is.
That's a lot. And understanding that, I look at adrenals as that fight or flight response, because that's what most people know. And in that fight or flight response, what typically happens is that, you have that influx of cortisol.
And adrenaline, yeah.
So that is that, those are hormones. And so it's saying, hey, you need to be pay attention to what's happening so that you can get away from that bear, even though there's no bears here, but you know what I mean? So you can get away from that bear. And that cortisol is supposed to rise only for a short period of time. And then maybe 1 to 2 hours later, it's supposed to come down. But then what happens when it doesn't?
100%.
There's where we have the problem. And not only is it that, it's a stress response, but what happens is once that stays high, then we have a whole other issue that happens dealing with more of a chronic situation.
Absolutely.
That happens. So what have you seen with patients or clients that come into your office in thinking of it from an adrenal standpoint?
Yeah, so let me explain this a little bit. And actually, I'm so sorry. We have an amazing person behind screen kind of helping us. Can you jump to slide 9? Because I have this great way of explaining this that I think will help. So you'll see a castle in slide 9 here. And this is kind of the adrenal response, right? So the way I like to think about it is we are the king or queen. Maybe that's just my way of thinking of things. I like to be a queen in my castle, right? My body is the castle. And our autonomic nervous system are the guards outside the castle, right? They're there to protect. And like you said, at the best, they're there to protect us from physical danger. So if that bear's coming at me, or if there are, a whole army coming to try to invade my castle, I want my soldiers to fight, right? But here's the thing, our body's really freaking smart, and it mitigates. And what ends up happening in my office is that emotional component or the perceived danger. So what does that mean? That means if I'm thinking I'm going to go to work today and my boss is going to say, you have this, this, and this, and you failed at this, I already feel like I'm in danger. So that adrenaline, that cortisol goes up. Well, here's the thing. In our society, I don't know about you, but I know I work my 13-hour days. I know you work a lot of hours, and then you're a mom on top of that, right? You got constant stress.
Right.
Our body is not intended to live in that constant stress, but we are.
Right.
So that 2 hours that you talked about where cortisol and adrenaline are supposed to come down, it's not. You're getting re-triggered. So for somebody who's continuously turning that on, it can take up to 3 days if you do nothing about it.
Right.
And that's what's happening. A lot of people coming into my office are having this chronic state of stress, this chronic state of danger. Eventually, that's causing severe levels of anxiety because they don't even know at this point what's triggering it anymore. I know if I'm stressed out, sometimes it's just me losing my keys. I'm like, what am I doing? I need to get to office. I need to get there by 8 a.m. And I'm freaked out. Well, now I'm coming into office. My business partner's trying to talk to me about something pretty normal. And I'm like, what are you doing? Just give me a minute. And she's like, girl. Right? Because that's how we're reacting. And when we respond to people like that, people respond back to us.
Absolutely.
And then we intake that information as, well, people are upset at me. And somebody with anxiety is going to think, what did I do? Because they're not even connected to how their body is making them respond. And so we're having severe levels of anxiety now, severe levels of depression, because I'm sorry, who wants to go out when you constantly feel this state of fight or flight? You're never going to want to go out. It's hard. And then at the worst, one of the things you were talking about, I'm going to bring it back to your story. So the hippocampus, I like to describe her like a little secretary hippo. You have a 3-year-old. So you know the hippo on Doc McStuffins, right? So that's our memory secretary. And she intakes information. But when we go into trauma response, she hides under her desk. She's like, oh, that memory? I don't want it. Get it away from me. I'm not going to hear it. So she never integrates that with meaning. So now every time you see those new things, that hippocampus doesn't know what to do with those memories. And then your alert system goes off again. And that's what we're finding on a constant basis. And it doesn't even have to be that stressful. Like that was an extreme situation.
Absolutely.
But little situations, because again, it's the perceived sense of danger.
Absolutely.
And just that can cause huge issues.
And I think about that just being a mom, the perceived sense of danger. So I do that on a constant basis, right? Whether it be my teenage son that's going out to drive because I'm like, put your seatbelt on. keep your hands on the steering wheel, keep this above, you know, keep your driver's license and things. So conversations that you think you shouldn't be having, I have to have that. And not only that, just in general, I always say my wheels were always turning. I had to learn how to turn them off. My wheels were always turning, and it's like, is this going to happen? Is this not? Well, it hasn't. And why am I even thinking that? Because 90% of the time, none of that happens. And that's why I said women are more stressed than men. That's why I put an emphasis on like moms working from home, because of our hormones, we respond a lot differently than men do.
Absolutely. Well, you know, it's funny you bring up women. So women have mitigated to hold their stress response till later, right? Because we got to be the problem solvers in that moment. And it's to nothing against men. Like Dr. Washington already said, it's nothing against men. But women, doctors, firemen, we all do the same thing. We have to be present in that moment. But when you get home and you got other work to do, guess what goes away? Your ability to focus.
Right.
Because at that time, your alarm system's like, all right, so I held it together.
Right.
Here you go. Enjoy.
Right.
No focus. No breathing naturally. Stress is coming on. And then you can't sleep.
Right.
And I'm sure you can speak to what happens when we don't sleep at night.
Right. Then it's just a whole nother ball game, which great segue. Because as we talk about the adrenals, there are, you know, so if you go to the slide that says Swiss watch principle. So in the wellness way, we talk about this constantly, the Swiss watch principle. In the middle, you'll see that there's a nervous system that we have listed there. So the principle of it is, in a Swiss watch, we have these gears, right? And these gears are all interconnected. And so when I think about the adrenals and our stress responses, I mean, people are going to raise their hands when I say, how many of you have been stressed and then had like constipation or diarrhea because it's impacted our digestive system? How many of you had stress and then you, you know, got sick? So it focuses on every single system. So to try to put it in a little box and say we can focus on this one small thing and get somewhere is really, it's kind of crazy. But I feel like just in traditional medicine, I think because we are so geared of taking something or to help with it, that we're okay with that, which we shouldn't be, because it's not the small, tiny box. It's every single system that is affected. And one thing that we don't talk about is that when we have high levels of stress, it dampens the, not cortisol, excuse me, the hydrochloric acid in our system. So when we think about our digestive system, it dampens that hydrochloric acid, which is needed to help to sterilize that foods that come in, kill off those pathogens, helps with digestion and absorption. So then when you wonder why you have all of these issues that come along with it, it's like, well, because it started with the adrenals and your body is responding to what it's being given.
Absolutely. So what ends up happening, right, is the body kicks in and says, what are the parts of the body that are unnecessary right now? What's unnecessary? I don't need my stomach. I don't need my sex organs. In that moment, when I'm in fight or flight, that bear is coming at me. I don't have time to think, wow, I really should digest this food, or I'm hungry. No, you don't think about that. It needs to turn off the systems that's unnecessary. So the stomach goes, and then the inflammatory hormones go straight to the stomach because it deals with it like a cut. So what ends up happening is like severe stress can cause inflammatory issues, digestive issues like you're talking about, because those are the parts of the body that we don't need when we're in danger.
And when we think about it from a situation of, again, killing those pathogens off, we wonder why we get ulcers and things like that in our stomach. Well, because it's bacteria driven. When you think about H. pylori or something like that, it's bacteria driven. So if we don't have enough hydrochloric acid to begin with, then the likelihood of setting ourselves up for failure, I mean, it's huge.
Absolutely.
It's huge. And another thing, though, that I want to talk about when looking at the adrenals is the immune response. Oh my gosh. I think that this is something that totally gets left out 100%. With the immune response. So when we have stress, I feel like everything comes back to the immune system. I really do.
It does.
Everything comes back to the immune system, and it's immune response that we're looking for. So our immune system is set up to say, hey, that's foreign. Let's flag it. And when I say flagging, that's antibodies. So antibodies are there to say, hey, this is a foreign object. We're going to flag it so that you know, so that the cleaner uppers, so those macrophages can come in and they can just munch away and eat everything away to have that response that we need to have. I think it drives me a little bit crazy when it says the body made a mistake. And I'm like, yeah, no, it didn't. The body knows exactly what it needs to do. But are we set up for that body to respond in the way that it should? It's just responding.
Yep.
Definitely just responding. And when we have high cortisol levels, that plays on those white blood cells, those fighters that are there that are supposed to help that immune response. So when we have that situation that happens, it's a problem. It's definitely a problem. I mean, how many, again, I guess I go back to some people who have adrenal issues find themselves sick. And why is that? Because now it's down regulating that immune response because we don't have the capacity to, or we weren't already set up to fight those particular invaders off.
Absolutely. Well, it's so interesting that I find the most interesting about the immune system and the adrenals, right? Like little bit of stress, your immune system kicks in to help you. Too much stress.
That's right.
It throws its hands up and is like, I can't help you anymore because you're not helping me.
Right.
Because like you said, it's a balanced system.
Right.
Right? Like we need to keep everything in balance. And like you said, I think in society today, we're so hyper focused on treat the symptom.
Right.
That we're not seeing it as a system. And I think that's where the big problem's coming in.
Absolutely. And then we have that situation where, have you been wired and tired? Or I call my women my clock watchers.
Yep.
Because you're sitting there like, it's 1 o'clock, it's 2 o'clock, it's 3 o'clock. So adrenals can definitely, with that increased cortisol level, you can't sleep. You can't sleep. So we have the situation where you're wired and tired. But I think the bigger question is then why just in society are we not doing proper testing to understand where this is coming from?
It's a good question. Preventative instead of intervention?
Why? Right. I mean, too much like right.
Right.
Too much like right. So I find that really interesting. And I'm sorry, we have Allison back here that's handling our slides. And so I'm totally like talking all over the place. So she's just looking like,
what slide am I supposed to be on?
So I apologize if you guys aren't able to follow along with me. But it's like when I get on a topic or off topic, then we just go with the flow. And that's what's so great about today. So what else do you have?
Yeah, so let me talk a little bit about this balancing system, right? So if we go to slide 10, right? Ideally, we want to balance everything out because the truth is that we don't want to be in rest and digest or a parasympathetic nervous system 100%, right? It's a great place to be because it's our calm zone. But if that was the case and I'm walking on the street and I see a car coming to me, I'm like, oh yeah, car's fine, no problem. No, like I need that immune system. I need my adrenals, my cortisol to kick in and say, here's how to protect me, right? So we need that balance. But right now in society, we're not working on that balance. And like you mentioned, as it was, we were already stressed. But now COVID came, right? This new normal. Moms and dads having to figure out new schedules, having to do, online learning, e-learning, trying to figure all this out. And on top of everything else, then we have the social injustice that got thrown in just straight in the middle of all of this. No matter what side you stand on, it doesn't matter. It still brought on stress.
Right.
So we're not working to balancing. As it was, we weren't built on that, right? How many times do I feel guilty at the end of the day if my friend calls me and says, hey, I'm having a really bad day, to be like, oh, I just heard 13 hours of difficulties, but I'm going to now feel bad if I tell my friend, you know what, I need my time. So you're taught to feel guilty, or the mom guilt. The mom guilt exists, right? Moms can't go get a massage. Mom, what are you doing? You have kids. Shouldn't you be at that dance recital? So that kicks in, right? But the truth is that we need this balancing system. And here's the reason why. So you'll see on the next slide, you'll see this wonderful Starbucks cup. I'm not going to lie. I'm an addict to Starbucks. Not caffeine, but my passion tea, I'm an addict to, all right? So here's the thing. We got this beautiful cup that we have. I like to call it my stress cup. And you'll see it filling up. If we're doing nothing to decrease the amount of stress, that cup overflows, right? And that's where anxiety and depression kick in. Because there's no input that's helping us decrease that water, right? Or decrease that stress level. So I talk about breathing a lot because all of the science shows that if you do diaphragmatic breathing, so what does that mean? So that means actually sending the breath straight through the nose all the way down to the stomach, right? How many of us do that on a day-to-day?
No.
No. Your breath comes to about right here. I can guarantee on a normal basis. We don't think about breathing all the way into my stomach, all right? And in fact, in society, we have such an issue around like body image,
right,
that we're not going to blow up our stomach. We do the opposite. Like we're taught, suck it in.
And then you breathe.
Right. And then you're sending messages to your chest at all times like, hey, body, I'm in danger.
Right.
So here's the thing. Have you ever been in a stressful situation? Somebody's like, just breathe.
Yeah.
How helpful is that?
Right.
Real helpful, right? No, it doesn't work like that. Look, just breathe. That's the last thing you ever want to do. I don't care if it's a tantruming child or a tantruming adult. It doesn't matter. Just breathe doesn't work in that moment. Just breathe works when you do it in the morning, when you do it at night, when nothing else is going on. Why is that? Because you're emptying out that cup. So here's the thing. If I wake up 7 o'clock, take 2 minutes worth of breath, right? Now that cup, maybe I was always at 80% filled. Well, maybe now I've filled it to 70. I've emptied it out. Now I got 10% more to work with in my day, right? So these are little things that we need to start doing in our day-to-day to start emptying out that cup.
That's right.
Because here's the thing, stress isn't going away.
Right.
I mean, that's just the truth of our system. I wish we could have a perfect system where everybody's super zen and we have no stress. That doesn't exist.
Nope.
And it's not happening. So what does that mean? Is that means we have to start doing things to help. Because here's the truth. We can change our stress response. We can retrain the brain. Neuroplasticity exists. The brain is brilliant, right? This is how we mitigated our stress response to believe that perceived danger is danger. Well, now we can do the opposite.
Right.
Right? So what does that mean and how do we do it? All right, well, let's talk about Dr. Siegel here, who has this brilliant thing called the Healthy Mind Platter. It's kind of like, I know Michelle Obama kind of changed our healthy plate, right, to figure out how to eat. Well, we got a Healthy Mind Platter to figure out what we got to do for our mind, because guess what? We got to do something. All right, so the first thing is we talk about sleep. You talked about this a little bit. Cortisol should be highest in the morning, right?
That's right.
And you said, and I think you've told me before, at night, it should be the lowest to go to bed, right?
And that's circadian rhythm.
Absolutely. So that's our 24-hour biological clock, right? So if we start training our body that at a certain time at sleep time, and we start doing the same routine, our body's really smart. It's like, oh, damn, she's putting those dishes away. I got to start producing that melatonin because I know what's coming on, right? I don't even need a melatonin pill.
Right.
Because my body will naturally produce it if it knows it's that time at night, right? If I step outside and start to see it darkening, it starts to send messages to my brain, hey, start start bringing it in that melatonin, start lowering everything because we're starting to go down, right? Same thing in the morning when I wake up. Instead of looking at this beautiful thing, which I know we're all addicted to, right? If I just look outside at sunlight, it wakes up my system. That cortisol is saying like, hey, it's morning time, right? So sleep time is real important, sleep routine.
Right.
And I have fought people because people have told me nonstop, I don't have a sleep routine. In fact, one of my business partners, Rachel, I'm calling you out. Sorry, girl. She's like, I don't have a routine. And I'm like, Rach, there's got to be something you do. And she started to think about it. She's like, oh, I put my son's toys away. And I'm like, there it is. We think sleep routine. We think I have to brush my teeth. Like when we were little, right? Like mama said, sleep routine. You got to start brushing your teeth. You read a book. But adults have it too. You know, what's your sleep routine? Do you know it?
I do. I do. So for me, getting home from work, I come straight out of these scrubs. I take a shower. I put on relaxing clothes. Get my kids, we eat dinner. Get them ready for bed. Once they're in the bed, then I always have lavender going in my house. So I have a diffuser. Make sure my room is dark. I don't watch news, and I'm not on my phone. I get in trouble all the time about my phone. You know, I have my mom or my husband, they're like, you never answer your phone. I use my phone for the purpose to call. That's it.
Smart.
You know, so like now I don't have my ringer on, so I'm not sitting there looking at my phone because that's just not a behavior of mine, so I don't have to worry about like the backlight and things like that. But typically like 9 o'clock, my body is like, okay, you know, I've got the kids to bed. I've had time to wind down. And I think that's highly important. Like once they're asleep, we call that adult time. And that's whether you have conversation or you do absolutely nothing, or you do something that you truly enjoy.
Absolutely. Well, here's what's funny. You just hit on a bunch of other things that I'm going to talk about right now. All right, so we talked about connection time, right? That adult time, maybe with your husband, maybe that conversation with your husband. Because here's the thing, we ran in packs. Back in the day, we ran in packs. It is in our social, in our nature, in our biological nature to be social.
Right.
If we don't have that, we have depression. That automatically comes. The more and more isolated you feel, the more alone you feel, you end up feeling depressed. That's just natural.
Right.
So you need that connection time, right? So that's another piece of that makes this
So
Platter.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna ask the question though. So how do you think that we should go about like these kids that aren't being able to connect and have that time? Like what would be a suggestion that, you know, that we can start to implement?
Yeah, so that's a really good question because I've had a lot of this, right? So I've asked for Zoom dates for our kiddos, right?
Okay.
If not Zoom dates, I've asked for safe play dates outside. Right? Because, and here's the thing, no matter where you fall in this, right, with the masks and stuff like that, it's safer outside, right? The Illinois regulation right now is you're not required to wear a mask outside if you're walking around. So here's the thing, have them go outside, have them play. If they have family that they can connect to, cousins, have them interact. The truth is that you are still allowed to interact with people right now, beyond just mom and dad. Right? Because kids are like, all right, mom and dad, I've seen you for 6 months, just like you're tired of me. Right. I'm done with you.
Right.
So cousins, playtime outside, even if it's just smiling or waving at a kid in a park while you're playing, more like a parallel play now, right? When you're little, when you're 2-year-olds, they play next to each other, they don't interact, right? Even if it's just that and they're talking, that's enough to get it going, right? And our adults need the same thing. You know, just this right here is probably one of the most connection times I've had in a while in terms of like face to face.
Right.
So, but that's part of our nature, right? So that's a huge piece. Playtime. You just brought up kids, right?
Right.
So playtime's huge for kids, right? Send them to play, do things like that. But guess what? Playtime's huge for adults. How many adults do you know play?
Not. I mean, no. I would say no because we do the rat race, right? We do the rat race. We go to work. We work taking our kids to activities, and then when you go home, you're like, I'm so tired or whatever. That again, then it's like you just need that quiet time. So is there play during the week? I'd say no. At least for me, it's a no.
Well, this is one of the requirements of our healthy platter, right?
Okay.
This is something that we need. Adults need playtime. So what does that look like for adults? I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I'm also 0 to 5 specialist. So for me, getting on the floor and playing doesn't bother me at all. But for some adults, they're like, look, Dr. Salinas, me getting on the floor? No, my bones hurt. What are you talking about?
Right. I can't get up.
Right, it hurts. Here's the thing. Dancing is play as adults. Joking around with people is play as adults. We forget that. You know, kids laugh an insane amount. It's like 600 or 700. Dr. Vera knows the statistic like better than I do. But adults, it's like 16 times.
Right.
In a day. 16 compared to hundreds. Yeah, we're stressed out. So we gotta start implementing it. Look, I'm notorious. I will blast my music in the car. I will not get on a phone in the car. And I will dance and sing at a red light.
Okay.
And it seems silly, right? And yeah, people are gonna be like, that weirdo right there. But you know what? It's part of play. It's the way I can get play in my 13-hour day.
Right.
Because if not, what am I doing? I'm not doing anything but work, right? All right, so we got playtime. Downtime. You mentioned this. Sometimes I just sit and do nothing. And the hardest thing for most of my adults, I don't care who I talk to, friends, clients, they're like, oh no, I can't sit still. My mind's running nonstop. But here's the thing and here's the trick. Your brain stops when you acknowledge it.
Absolutely. I agree. Yeah. It goes back to you having that morning routine. And I've said this on Facebook, and I tell my patients this all the time. When I get up, I do a sun salutation, which if you guys don't know what that is, it's more of yoga. It's yoga positions that you go through.
Absolutely.
And I do grounding. Because what I found with grounding is that it gives me that opportunity to be in that moment. And so whether that's grounding in, you know, getting my vitamin D, grounding in saying a prayer, whatever you find is that peaceful time, that's what I do. You know, so I find that really highly important.
Absolutely. Well, here's the funny thing. We talked about so much of the stress response, right? And we talked about how the adrenals and the cortisol, and it's 2 hours to 3 days. Well, here's a quick tip. I'm going to actually, can I take you through this?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So this is a great grounding technique. This is what you do Not the just breathe, okay? The word safe. But this is what you do. All right, do me a favor.
Okay.
Look around this beautiful space we have here and find me 5 things that are blue.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
All right, you found 5?
Mm-hmm.
All right, now do me a favor. Find me 4 things on your body that you feel. So that might be the way your feet feel against your shoe.
Mm-hmm.
The t-shirt maybe.
Got it.
You got it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now give me 3 things that you hear.
I hear water trickling.
Okay. This is hard.
That's fun. That's like very prominent.
Yeah.
I hear the vent. It's
Mhm.
really light from where the air is flowing. Gosh, it's so quiet. See, this is what COVID does. It makes everything so silent. I would like to hear some street. Okay, I heard laughter. See?
Oh, there it is. There it is. All right. Give me 2 things that you smell. And if you need, you can pull that hair. Because I know I
smell
was.
books. You know how paper smells?
Yes,
I mean,
that's a great
obviously,
smell.
Right? I smell books. And then I smell my lavender because I have lavender on.
Okay, perfect. Give me 1 thing you taste. This might be the hardest.
Gosh, I'm singing to myself.
Singing's great.
Okay, so I will admit this. Before I came in, I had these pistachio because I haven't had dinner. So that's what.
Yeah.
So I had that taste. I ate pistachios. I can't talk. Yeah.
Awesome. In this last couple minutes that we've been doing
Mhm.
this, how much have you been thinking about your problems or things that are going on? That's
0.
it, right?
Right.
So what happens when the stress response goes, like we talked about the stomach going, your brain goes, right? This is the frontal lobe right here.
Mm-hmm.
This is the part about attention and focus and concentration and planning. That's the first thing to go, right? So our brain literally goes, we're going to turn off. And this piece called our caveman brain, our old brain, our reptilian brain, whatever you want to call it, that's that stress response, right? That's what's in charge of turning it on. So what I just did for you is just brought your brain back on.
Okay.
So that's a really great grounding technique for your kiddos, for adults.
Yeah.
That if they're stressed out, you just could ground them by doing that, right?
Absolutely.
So that was one of the things you were talking about. Grounding's huge, right? That downtime is huge. Well, we have another thing called time in, which is a lot of the stuff you were mentioning, the prayer, meditation. Now, here's my thing with meditation, because I say meditation.
I was gonna say it's probably the same thing I do, but I'll
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I would say I'm not a good meditator because I'm doing this, I'm doing this, and then I'm like, okay, it's over. Or else I go to sleep. Like if I get into that state, then I'm like, okay, and then I just dozed off and totally didn't work.
But here's the thing. That's meditation.
Oh, okay.
Meditation, we have this idea about meditation, like get rid of your thoughts. Okay, guess what? It's like me telling you, don't look at this beautiful woman we have back there who's wonderful for us. Don't look at her. The first thing you want to do, right, is go straight to her, right? If I do the same thing with my thoughts and I'm like, don't think about my 8 a.m. and who's there. The first thing my brain's going to go is go do that, right? So it's accepting. It's saying, I acknowledge you. It's the same thing when we talked about, right? When you acknowledge it, the brain's like, oh, chill, you got it? Great. I don't have to keep bringing it up because you know it's there.
Right.
A good meditation is anytime you just took a moment to be present in your day-to-day.
Got it.
So it could be a couple breaths.
Right.
You know, it could be you moving like this, but you're trying to just sit for a couple minutes. That's a good meditation. Because what you're doing is you're retraining the brain to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. Because remember, the brain, the minute it gets uncomfortable, it's like, we're in danger, and it pops off.
Right.
So all you're doing in those moments is you're retraining the brain to be like, oh, so not all discomfort is danger. Oh, got it. And that's what we need to do, right? So that's why time in is so important, because it retrains the brain.
Very interesting.
Super cool, right?
So many great tools.
I know. So we're going to give you the rest of them, all right? Physical time's huge.
Okay.
Now, on a 13-hour, I love my workouts. Anybody who knows me knows I need at least 30 minutes worth of me time with my workouts, headphones in, doing my thing. On a 13-hour day, that's not happening, right? I take walks. Now, watch this. I get my mom on a Thursday before I walk into my day. I'm like, hey, we're going for a walk. She's like, amazing, let's go for a walk. So sometimes it's 6 a.m. right when the sun's coming out. Well, this is great because now it's serving a couple of things. Connecting time, because now I'm connecting with mom. Physical time, because now I'm walking. Right? And I'm sending messages to my brain to start that circadian rhythm to say it's morning time and we're good. Now, I just popped off 3 different parts of that project. It's doable, right?
Absolutely.
Because if I told you we need to do every single one of the things, so I told you already sleep time, time in, downtime, play time, connecting time, physical time, and focus time, you're going to look at me and be like, all right, Dr. Salinas.
Right. Like, how am I going to get all that done in a day?
So it's taking 1 hour and breaking it up. Everybody needs different things, right? So for you, out of the 7 things that I just mentioned, what's most important to you? And here, if you need to see,
yeah, please. So it was the downtime is definitely something I need. And I guess it, and I don't know if the downtime is considered when I just say like just bringing it in and bringing it in that moment. I have to do that.
That's exactly what it is.
I have to do it. I feel like if I don't, it's like my day just doesn't start right.
Absolutely.
It's like getting to work 5 minutes before the doors open and then you're like all over the place. I can't do that. Yeah. So it's like
you need that grounding time, that
absolutely,
downtime.
Absolutely.
So that's the thing. So maybe for you, you spend more time in that downtime. Maybe for an hour. If I told you and everybody here, 1 hour a day, you got to do these 7 things, but just break them up throughout your day.
That's definitely doable.
It's doable, right? Because it's 5 minutes here, it's 10 minutes there. Back in the day when we used to take Ubers in the city, right? A long time ago, because I won't go in an Uber right now, to be honest. But when I used to take Ubers, it's as simple as just taking a deep breath consciously. So instead of doing this, it's me sitting there and thinking, okay, I'm just gonna, that's an inhale, that's an exhale. If I do that for a minute, guess what? I just met some of these. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and that's what, and this is what's so great. I mean, this is why I totally just love what you all do.
Yeah.
Because it's giving simple steps to making some really big changes in your daily routine and just how you feel.
Absolutely.
Just very simple.
And you just said it, right? Like your day starts off so different. When you take that time to pray and to ground and to do what's best for you. You know, and it's crazy, right? But all of those small things, all the research is saying like, that's what we do to help the stress response. That's it. And it sounds crazy because it sounds simple. But until I brought this up, how much were you thinking about how important those things were in the day to day?
Yeah, not really. I mean, no. I mean, I will say that I do stick with my whole grounding situation. And to me, that's important. But everything else, it's like, I'm like anybody else. I'll do it. I think I'll do it. And you don't do it, you know, because you don't really, this is where in the wellness way we talk about priorities all the time, like finding those priorities, things that are important to you, and actually executing them. It's one thing to say you're going to do something, but it's totally different to actually like implement and then make sure that you're doing that on a regular basis. And you know, so I have a small list, and there were a few, and I admitted this to my colleagues. There are some I definitely check the box, and then there's some I'm like, ugh, like, is it that I'm not making time? But then it's like, do I really want to do it is always the question. And like, what did I need to change? If I'm truly saying that this is what I want to do, then how do I do that?
Absolutely. And sometimes it feels overwhelming, right?
It can.
Like when I tell you there are 7 things we need to do on a daily basis, that to me, like if you tell me I have to add on more to my plate as a business owner of 2 businesses and a director at a non-for-profit, I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, no, nothing thank else. You, right? But here's the thing, there's simple things that we're already doing, but it's being conscious about doing them. Right? Like I know avid tea drinkers. I'm an avid tea drinker, right? And how many times am I setting up my tea, doing this, and doing something else, right? If I just took 1 minute to focus on watching my tea brew, that's 1 conscious minute, right? I could get the rest. I guarantee the rest of the stuff gets done faster, because I'm focused on one thing.
Absolutely.
Right? But it's just little things like that. And here's the thing, pick things that are doable.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Right? So don't set yourself up for failure. Like there's enough of that in the world.
Right.
Set yourself up for success. So if it's today I'm going to sing one song in the car. Well, that's pretty doable for me, right? Go in that car, turn it on, and then guess what? Your body's like, ooh, it gets that dopamine rush.
Right.
Those feel-good hormones are like, I did it, right? And then what happens is you want to do more of it.
Right.
That's how it works. It's a loop. You chase that dopamine rush. Gratitude. How many times do we hear gratitude? Like nowadays, like there are a million books on gratitude, right? The reason why gratitude works is because when you feel grateful, it releases dopamine.
Interesting.
So you get a little dopamine rush and you feel good.
My kids need to learn that.
Right?
Gratitude.
Do it in the morning.
If they're watching. Hint, hint.
Cough, cough, hint, hint.
Yeah, so, just think, to kind of wrap this up.
Absolutely.
There's something, so I want you to go to the slide that says an immune panel. So as we're also stressed and understanding the role the cortisol can play in the immune response, I go, well, why aren't we doing, as you said, proactive rather than reactive, right? Let's be proactive. And this is something that can be done from your physician. You can go into a lab and have this blood test performed. Now, interpretation is a whole other thing, right?
For sure.
Of course, right? But as we're worried about a virus, why don't we understand where our immune system lies?
Can we do that?
Oh, yeah, we can.
Tell me about that, please.
So here we go.
Right.
So, she can't see the slide. You have the slide.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to pull that out. Let me see this. Let me pull this up.
We don't talk about this at all. And it's understanding. So looking at that CBC with DIF, we're looking at that innate immune system. This is the one that you're born with. This is the one that mom gave to you, right? But then if we do what's called our, I have a lymphocyte subset panel, or it has your CD4 and CD8. This is looking at your acquired immune system. This is looking at your natural killer cells. This is looking at your T cells. This is looking at your B cells. And the question is, okay, how is our immune system going to respond, right? If it's low, it can be a bad day. It can be a real bad day, right?
For sure.
So what are the constituents that are needed to do a rebuilding process, rebuild and restore? So to all the parents out there, right? This is something that can be done. I'm encouraging you to have these tests performed as we're going back into the school year. So I don't care if you're a teacher, a bus driver, a student, a mom, we're all in these situations and we're all so very concerned.
Absolutely.
If you understand these panels, then there's no worry. We're not worried. Again, I say I'm not worried about a mask. My kid is not staying home because of the virus. I'm keeping him home because I want him to have social interaction. So we can do that at home. He can get outside and play. I want him to be able to not feel isolated. I don't want him to feel like he's got to be afraid of something. And so that's why we're doing e-learning. Not saying it's going to be an easy task. Gosh,
sure.
by far, it's not going to be easy.
Right.
And thank you, Jesus, to my mom, because I'm still only going to work.
Shout out to Mama.
Yeah. And this is what she does, So I can't do what I do without my mom. And so here's my gratitude. Right?
Oh, see, didn't it feel good enough?
It does. So I give props to my mom because she does help me with the kids. But again, running this panel is going to tell you where your immune system lies. Now, again, if we have, some low values there, then that's something that we need to work on. And then what you need to do is understand what helps to rebuild and restore. That's a conversation that we need to be having rather than being scared.
Absolutely.
No one wants to be scared. No one wants their adrenals. I want to sleep. I want to be able to have regular digestive system. And I don't want to be sick. And it's easy as pie just to run this panel. So you have the panel there.
Amazing.
And Allison put the panel up there. So this is something, again, that can be performed at your doc's office.
Okay.
You can come to me.
Amazing.
There's so many different avenues to go.
Awesome. And that's so helpful to know, right? Because this information is not out there.
Right.
It's not being talked about. Like, I didn't hear about doing a test.
Right. And you probably won't.
Right.
Probably won't. They'll say, why? This is a question we get. Why are you doing an AIDS test? But if I want you guys, so this is what I love about Google. Now, I would say I don't like when I have patients like to be Google Docs.
Oh, I know.
Because then I'm like, oh no, no. I mean, I think it's a blessing and it's a curse, right?
For sure.
Because we have the ability to go online and to Google things, right? So this is something I want you to Google. You Google that CD4, CD8, and then just read what it says and see what it tests. And then when you can put it together, you're like, light bulb moment. Here it is. And again, if it needs to be interpreted, if you don't understand it, that's what I do. Again, I'm about helping you to understand and make choices. Oh, I think that's good.
Ooh,
I feel choices. I think in healthcare we feel we don't have choices,
100%,
and we definitely do. And it's up to you. You can let somebody dictate if you choose. I choose not to. So, do you have anything in closing?
No, I mean, I think that's amazing. I think, to hear that there are ways to kind of gain information.
Right.
And then today we went over a bunch of small tips to work on how do we implement to start practicing that, right? I mean, again, they can go to you for the testing. They can reach out to me for more grounding techniques or more talks regarding that. But ultimately, this is what we're here for, right? We want to be here for all of you guys.
It's a message, and it's a message that's not commonly talked about. And so if we can bring that to you, and it just gives you a little bit of like, I mean, not saying that you're going to run out and do anything,
right?
But if you come into a situation or you feel like it's necessary, then you know that we're here. So Allison is going to share with you guys how we can be reached in what we do. So those last two slides there, Allison. So again, I'm at the Wellness Way for Ridge. If you guys are interested in more topics, I'll be here at Barbara's Bookstore once a month talking about different topics. Additionally, on Saturday mornings, I don't know if you know this, so the founder of the Wellness Way, Dr. Patrick Quinn, hosts, it's called A Different Perspective. Saturday mornings, if you go to my Facebook page, you can see that.
I think I have been watching it.
So jump on, like and share. You know what? If there's something that you like and share it, because keeping it to yourself is, who's that doing good? I mean, hopefully you're utilizing it, but again, if you like something, like it and share it. I think that's the best way to go about. And if you want to have a conversation with me, there is a number there that you can text at the bottom, and we can set up a 15-minute complimentary consultation. I am more than happy to speak with you because, again, we talk about topics that are not talked about often,
right?
And just making that connection. And when you come to me, most likely, you'll be seeing, you'll be going to her as well, Dr. Melissa, because I hand out cards like candy because I understand the importance. And again, I like connections that are meaningful. And
absolutely.
So I totally appreciate you.
No, we appreciate you. So in terms of myself, so like I said, my name is Dr. Melissa Salinas. I do own a private practice. That's the one she usually refers to. It's AMS Wellness. We're literally neighbors.
Right.
We're literally neighbors in terms of the practice. And then we opened Authentic Revival Movement, myself, Dr. Vieira, and Rachel Epps. Because here's the thing, psychology, insurance doesn't pay for this helpful stuff. Right? Insurance pays for top down. So let's work on the thoughts and let's help you. And that's great. And I stand by it because it works. But sometimes we need bottom up with top down.
Right.
And that's bringing in meditation, yoga, movement, all of these things together with psychology. And that's Authentic Revival Movement. We want to make a movement to change society, because how society is going is we're not going very well.
Right.
So let's work on changing this. And this is what we're doing. We're doing talks, we're doing workshops, retreats. All of this is going to be done to help give very real techniques, right? Because sometimes you're not ready to go in individual therapy. Sometimes you need just more information. And that's what Authentic Revival Movement is here to do. So reach out to me. Our logo's there, our information, our email. We're on social media, both Facebook and Instagram. That's going to be the easiest way because that's where we're at the most.
Yeah, and if you forget what she just said, you can always call me, and I'm telling you, I will direct you over there, because I truly believe that all these aspects of health are important, and bringing it all together in one, again, to do a rebuilding and restoring process, so restoration. So thank you guys for having us today.
Awesome. I wonder if there are any questions. Are there any questions?
There are a couple questions.
Cool. Awesome.
Go ahead.
Alrighty, our first question is, when you're falling into bad coping mechanisms, what is a way to help reframe those ideas and kind of thinking about managing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So bad coping mechanisms are hard, right? I don't like to label things as bad or good. Let me start there. It's not functional, right? Because the truth is that even your worst coping mechanisms, I'm going to use drugs, for example, right? People take drugs because they work, right? So they're working. So if I labeled that as bad, well, no, they're good because they're working. They're helping you through. But if it's intervening in your life, then let's start talking about little things that do make you feel good, right? And then ultimately, it's just making some of these small changes that we're talking about. If you're trying to, like, let's say if somebody's a drug user, right? And I know I'm taking it extreme, but like, let's say somebody's a drug user. I'm not going to tell them, get off the drugs right now, right? Like, that seems like a big task. So we have to start implementing new ways of doing things, right? So maybe it's, like you said, some grounding techniques in the morning. Well, maybe then you don't have to reach to, or let's say, I'll even use the biggest drug of them all, coffee, right? That caffeine is terrible, but we all love it. And I'm for sure one of the people who loves coffee. But maybe if you ground and you looked at the sun and it woke you up, maybe then you don't have to reach for the coffee that morning because you're grounded.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? So just adding little things rather than trying to make big changes.
For sure. All right, our next question is, what do you do when you have a work schedule that doesn't allow you to have a consistent sleep pattern?
Ooh. Yeah, that's definitely a hard one. And I feel like I have patients that come in with that where they maybe are working on third shift and not having consistent sleep patterns. Gosh, that's really a hard one because it's hard because again, our bodies work on that circadian rhythm. So again, as the sun comes up, your body should be ready to rise, and then as the sun goes down, you should be ready to fall asleep. So we have those people that are on third shift as that sun is going down, they're just waking up. They just woke up from their nap. So trying to get on a sleep schedule that works for them. Gosh, that's a really hard question because I don't think that there's a truly right answer other than trying to move more of your day. So where you would be sleep, trying to be more active during that time and then going through your day so that so you're still staying on some type of a rhythm. I don't know if that makes sense. So, so some people will say I come, let's say they may work from 11 to 7. So instead of like coming home and going to bed at that 7 o'clock hour when your cortisol should be at its highest point in the morning, then maybe trying to find things during the day so that you can now maybe move that down to about like a 3 or 4 o'clock where it's kind of more in the noontime when you have rest, but still trying to get an adequate amount of sleep in there that is going to make you functional. I really think that third shift in having that conversation, that's a hard one. What strategies have you?
Yeah, so one of the things I'll say right away is, like you said, even if you have to go to sleep, looking at that sun will just kind of naturally still keep you at that circadian rhythm, right? Maybe taking, like you said, enough sleep. So for my adults, it should be 8 hours. I'm going to be very honest. We've gotten into this habit of saying 6 to 8. It should be closer to 8.
Right.
But if that's going to be functional, 6 is functional for you, making it consistent as much as possible, right? And even if that consistency is like, let's say we have ER nurses, right, who have the night shift and they're working 2 nights on and then they're 2 nights off.
Right.
Even if you become consistent about your 2 nights on, you sleep at a regular time, and then your 2 nights off, you try to keep that same pattern, right? Because ultimately the body works on a system.
Right.
So if we can keep a system that works for you as much as possible. Now, again, things happen. The body can handle slight stress, right? And in fact, it's meant to handle slight stress, but we just got to keep a consistent as much as possible routine. But that's really tough.
Well, too, you have to think about it. So now I'm getting into foods, but so when you just said nurses, I always think about this. So just working in a hospital, most of the goods that you find there when you can snack are typically like donuts and sugary items. And that's really not going to be feeding your system what it needs. So here we go, talking about that whole cortisol situation going on. So understanding that food is just as important as sleep, and giving your body nutrient dense properties is going to help you to even rest better. So you have to take that into consideration when you have these weird shifts. And gosh, it's so easy to fall into the grabbing something quick and easy. But again, if it's sugar, that's a problem. And then too, it plays on your immune system. So here we go back on that whole circle and going back to that Swiss watch principle.
Can I quickly throw in because I know what I recommend is try to avoid caffeine. right?
Yeah.
Because caffeine's going to continue to kind of up, like it almost downplays the stress, but it's not true. Like the stress is still there, right? So it's only going to wreak havoc more. So I would say as much as possible avoiding caffeine. I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
I rely on you.
Well, I look at it too from a metabolism standpoint. Some people are able to metabolize it and they're like perfectly fine, but you know, if you can't, if you drink coffee way too late at night, then you're mad because again, then you become a clock watcher, then that's a problem for you. And two, if we're living on caffeine to keep our day going, then we're doing something terribly wrong. And sometimes, you know, it may just be, and I know this sounds really harsh, maybe like change your job. Change your job. I mean, honestly, change your job if it's bringing on that much stress, because guess what? I look at it from a standpoint of, do I want quality or quantity of life, right? I want quality. If that's not giving me quality, then you need to rethink what you're doing. I know it sounds harsh, sorry, but I mean.
But I think there's something to be said. If you're on coffee that much and you need to rely on it, there are other techniques we can implement to help you get through it, right? Because it's a cycle. So the coffee's going to affect your sleep. The sleep, then you're going to wake up with, you know, low levels of cortisol instead of high. And then that's going to affect your anxiety, your depression. So it's going to cycle through.
That's right.
I think that's the biggest thing to focus on here.
Right.
Is that it?
Huh? We do have one more if you guys want to take one more.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We're here.
It actually kind of relates to the previous question a little bit.
Okay.
When you're in a difficult work environment, what do you recommend as a method of navigating that with the added stress of the tenuous way working and jobs feel right now?
I'm going to throw my plug for meditation.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, because here's the thing. Like I said, meditation is not getting rid of your thoughts. Meditation is learning how to be present in the chaos, right? So if you're meditating and decreasing that level of stress, you have a better ability through your day to handle that added stress, right? So if you're emptying out your cup, you're less reactive to the day-to-day. And my other big plug for this is whatever somebody says or does in the workspace, it's a reflection of them.
I agree.
So here's the thing. People are mirrors. If we get triggered, it has not, like if you told me something and it triggered me, it has nothing to do with what you said, right? If you had triggered me by me hearing you say, change your job.
Right.
And I had a huge trigger and I was like, well, you know what?
Right.
Screw you.
Right.
That's me. That's something in me is triggering because it's something is unresolved inside of me.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
So that, and I know that's harder to do and put into practice.
Right.
But at the same end, if it's a hard work stress environment, or if there are people triggering you at your job or saying stuff, you also got to remember that that's on them. Whatever they say is on them. And that's the psychologist piece of me, right? Like that's where I'm like, it's a reflection of them and that's on them. And you got to remember, like, if you're doing right by you and you're doing right by your morals, your values, what you live by, then whatever your thoughts are not going to come into my circle.
I think too, you have to look at it from a standpoint. I think that a lot of people get into certain positions and they like the money that they're making, right? And that can be a truly stressful situation. But I go, what is it worth? What is it worth? Because, okay, yeah, let's say you make a lot of money, but you really hate what you do. Who wants to go into a place where you just really, like, you smell the place and you're like nauseous, right? Because you're like, I'm here, I make good money, but it's just terrible. Like, why would you do that to yourself? Again, I know it may sound harsh, but it's what is it worth to you? So this goes back to your, you know, your morals and your values of where you stand and how you look at yourself. I appreciate myself way too much to put myself in that situation. I mean, that's why I'm with the Wellness Way. That's why I opened another practice with Dr. Patrick, because it was a situation that I love what I did. I didn't like the environment that I was in. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the truth is that research has shown $75,000 or more, the same happiness carries through. Like your happiness does not increase anywhere above 75,000. So the reality is that if money's driving you, there may be bigger things that we can talk about.
That's right.
But for sure, I mean, putting yourself first, that's my biggest message for people, for you, for anybody watching. Put yourself first. That's not selfish. You cannot help anyone if your goodness cup, you are empty. If you're running on empty, there's no helping anybody. I put in gas in my tank in my car to get me from place to place. I got to put in gas in me. I got to take care of myself. and that's the same for anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I use that analogy all the time. Like, if you're on an airplane and they give you that description of, if the mask is to drop, put it on yourself first rather than your kids.
Right.
You can't save your kids if you can't breathe. You gotta take care of yourself. I mean, I know it sounds like a joke, but it's just reality of what is a true. It's a true statement.
But yeah,
So.
but we carry guilt, right? Because we can do it if it's an emergency situation, but we forget it in our day to day.
Right.
So here's your reminder today. Take care of you.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you guys. And thank you, Barbara's Bookstore, for allowing us to host here. And again, there's going to be more topics that I'll be hosting here in my simplistic way. Again, because I don't like to talk over anybody's head, but making sure that you understand what you can do and that it's all about you and you have choices. So thanks again.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.